Hi everybody, here's the latest installment of Life as I Know It. Been watching videos, trying to read news reports about the George Floyd death case, and I am appalled that it happened again, and I'm really pissed off because people think protests actually work. They don't. Everybody says the 60s protests got us where we are. No, it didn't change anything. The African American people, I should say, be specific, are still living in fear. They still live in fear of cops. They still live in fear of hate groups and races who at any time, as evident by the shooting at the Charlotte church, can come into anywhere African Americans are and shoot them. People say the 60s riots changed the way African Americans are viewed. No, it didn't. It just changed the form in which the racism takes place. Where it used to be lynchings, hangings, threats, KKK, Ku Klux Klan, and other hate groups. It has now gone from overt to covert. We have discrimination in the workplace, jobs given to white people over African Americans who are more qualified. We have racism in education, opportunities given to whites who are less deserving. Let's take a look at the scandal involving Felicity Huffman and Lori Loughlin. Their sense of entitlement, thinking they get all these places in college, and they're paying what amounts to, I don't even know how to describe that whole incident, but it is taking opportunities away from minorities, especially African Americans, who will work their ass off to get the grades, to get the requirements for scholarships, etc., etc. It takes that away from them. No wonder African Americans are feeling oppressed right now. Protests don't help in other areas. There is no effective communications occurring between the government officials with the power to stop this shit and those who are being victimized. Instead, what protests are doing are allowing people to come in from out of fucking state, incite riots, incite damage, incite people who already have bad image to deal with through no fault of their own. All so they can loot and steal. And some have even killed. A police officer has been killed in the line of duty during these riots. African Americans need to get up off their asses and stop saying protesting is the key to changing things when it is not. Effective change comes, like I've said, from communications between government officials and those being victimized. Also, we need to work under the underlying issues, which a lot of African Americans and celebrities and what have you deny aren't the real problem. Yes, they are the real problem. They're leading to the bad optics that African Americans have. People who are calling the cops on an African American gentleman who's in Central Park watching birds, a Harvard-educated man. This lady called the cops on him just because he asked her to leash her dog in an area where her dog was supposed to be leashed. She took offense to it, threatened to call the cops, called the cops, claimed that he was terrorizing her, harassing her, when he was smart and videotaped the whole episode, did none of the above. She deserves what she got. She lost her job, lost her dog, and I don't expect the consequences to end there. Think twice, white America, before you go after an African American or a Jewish person or a Muslim or any other ethnic group, Asian. Because even though, as you can see, I'm white as all get out, am not going to put up with it anymore. African Americans and other groups like Muslims and Jewish people deserve the same rights, the same treatment I get because my skin is pale as all get out. But in order to get that change, there has to, and I stress, there has to be effective communication. And riots are not effective tools for communications. Riots and protests only serve to put those in power who have the ability to change the status quo, eliminate racism, on the defensive. And when you put someone on the defensive, they won't listen to what you have to say. They will be listening to respond. That's different from truly listening. I've ranted enough. I'm going to do a podcast on this where I can write it down and write down even more. But know that I am pissed off that George Floyd died and is the latest victim of protest mentality and government officials' lack of action. Everybody on both sides carries some of the blame of what happened to this man. I don't care what you say. I'm not racist. My mother is racist. I lived with it. I hate it. I despise it. It's got to end. It's got to end with communication, and riots and protests do not work. If they worked, the riots of the 60s would have totally eliminated racism from our vernacular. We would not be having this discussion. No men, African American men, would not be dying at the hands of white police officers. We would not have fucking hate groups in the United States. There are 10 in the area I live in, Idaho, that I know of. We are famous for the Aryan nations. And God did I celebrate when that compound was burned to the ground. So again, racism does not work anymore. Neither does protest and riots. We need to sit down, address the issues, determine the reality of what is going on, and find viable solutions.